My name is Tim, and I'm a longtime environmental and social justice activist.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what life was like before Vital Actions?
Sure, yeah. So I was living in the United States. I was in punk bands. I had an art gallery. I'm a photographer. I love creating photographs, and I was showing work in an art gallery. I had a job for this vegan superfoods company, traveling around educating about like healthy foods like spirulina and stuff. So had a pretty good situation going. I've been a long time radical activist for animals, for social justice, and for the planet for a solid 30 years or so. So none of that, the ideas of Vital Actions, none of that was new to me, but the idea of like completely devoting my life to something like this was like the shift I wanted to make. So I basically like sold everything I had, went super minimalist, closed art gallery, retired from jobs, and went to Costa Rica with a hammock to live on the beach, and got away with not needing very much money, and eventually launched Vital Actions. And now here we are about like 8 years later. The org has grown quite a bit, and we're achieving quite a bit of results. But, yeah.
Great. And so what is Vital Actions and what do you do specifically?
Well, Vital Actions, the name itself actually came from like the sub name of what I would always say, like describing what we do. It used to be called Proyecto Huella, which is like Project Footprint. And then it would say Vital Action to protect the environment and focus on social justice. And then the Spanish language name wasn't working for marketing, so I shifted the whole name to Vital Actions. And so like the name itself is basically like what we're trying to do, but the focus is environmental defense. And then we always say, so because of it's super important to keep intersectional awareness. There's no one thing separate from other things. And so we talk in terms of environmental defense. We have to focus on what's happening socially, what's happening with the economy and things like that. And so from the intersectional perspective, our main focus is environmental defense, but we always say like without ignoring social justice. So there's a lot of focus on that too. So basically we're just raising fund, rallying support, those that trust us to donate, fire us up to get as much efficient, strategic environmental defense work happening, and always with the eye on social justice work too.
Conservation mean and look like to you?
Okay, conservation is actually a really interesting word in today's world, right? Like conservation, the definition or like the idea is like just keeping things as they are or protecting. And like in terms of the environment and in terms of how we're treating each other and in terms of social justice too, we're so far kind of behind the ugly curve. Like conservation used to be what I would say, like we're doing environmental conservation work, but really the language has shifted. We're doing emergency environmental defense and emergency environmental regeneration work, because yeah, it's not about conserving anymore. It's really about, oh my gosh, we are in a really bad situation. We've done it, we being like collective humanity and modern industrial complex, like so yeah, so conservation means to me it's like really abandon the idea of like, okay, we need to work really hard to sustain and keep what we've got going. It's actually gotten even deeper than that. And so it's more like, let's defend and isolate if there's a habitat that's still intact and functioning and full of its diversity, let's do everything we can to protect it and keep it healthy, because we need all of them that there are. And then if there's an animal that's endangered, we're facing losing a certain species, let's collectively focus our efforts on supporting what they need to reproduce at a healthy number and what habitat they need to survive. And so, and then also we can establish kind of spaces that have been kind of destroyed, like habitat that we have lost, and we can step in and collectively focus our energy on regenerating it. So like ideas of reforestation and kind of reintroducing animal species and things like that. So yeah, so conservation I think is a little bit of a thing of the past now. It's more about like emergency response action. And like that's kind of how our campaigns are modeled. And like when I think of what's the next thing we're going to do, everything that we're involved in doing right now are things that I've, in kind of taking a nice solid stance and looking around and taking a few breaths, and I being able to see what is really happening right here where we are and what's really necessary. What are the emergencies? And we get on those. And so for us, that we've got our major focuses are habitat defense. So identifying spaces that we can protect, whether it's physically or putting them into a nature reserve, or just educating folks who are in that area or the folks that do own the land to keep it, and why it's so important to be intact. And the other is like emergency regeneration. So finding spaces that have been sort of damaged and lost, that we call it land rescue, like pulling land out of the cattle industry, pulling land out of the dairy industry, pulling land out of industrial forestation, forestry, pulling land out of industrial forestry, pulling land out of industrial monocrop culture and stuff like that. So we've identified a few spaces. We've actually been able to purchase land and get them into protection, and then we'll spend 2 or 3 years regenerating and planting and nurturing, and then hopefully, and then just step away and let it become forest. And so, yeah, so this is what the conservation and the environmental defense movement looks like to me now, is really strategic, focused sort of emergency responses.
Right. I actually never considered it that way. The whole conservation to emergency. So that language shift is pretty interesting too.
Yeah, I think the language shift there is really powerful, as we talk sustainability and conservation, and both of those are really implying like stay on track. Our track hasn't been okay. The track that we're on is put us in great danger and put the planet in a really bad situation, and our whole community, the animals, the plant communities, us on different levels of our communities, we've put it all in danger. So it's like, we don't want to stay on track. It's time to radically redesign and change our reactions and what our actions look like. Yeah.
So how has single-use plastic impacted your community where you're at right now?
Okay, yeah, single-use plastic is on the list of some of our worst mistakes. A little thing about the local community here. So we operate most of our campaigns right now we're in southern Nicaragua, in a very rural and impoverished part of Nicaragua. Nicaragua is not really known for its super solid economy anyway, and we're in one of the areas where it's even like the most impoverished. And I want to back up a second. It's not Nicaragua's fault. It's not Nicaragua's fault that there's this poor economy. That was sort of a little joke there, but not on their behalf. It's because there's too many people taking more than their share somewhere else. There's not enough here for the folks to basically support themselves. But anyway, in these really impoverished rural communities, the stuff that's in plastic, this garbage food that's just inside of this other super damaging garbage, is the most affordable. It's been brought in, it's been distributed, and it's been like price controlled and offered as the most inexpensive foods, and it's kind of conditioned everybody to feel like they need it, or that it's the norm. And it's pulling people away from sustainable farming and eating fresh, whole, local foods and stuff, and they start wanting this imported plastic packaged junk food stuff. And so it really comes in. And so the system, the industrial modern capitalism, has come in and introduced this as what, like, they've gotten people to want it, right? Like basically hooked people on the appearance of it being easy, and then just that the junk food is addicting. It's delicious, it's salty, it's sugary. It's like it's designed very intentionally to trigger our pleasure sensors, and so that's what everybody ends up wanting. And so the plastic garbage over the last like 20 years in Nicaragua has just skyrocketed, but there's been little or no education about the difference between like what the old garbage looked like and what now new garbage looks like with all this plastic and everything. And there's little or no change in how the plastic is handled. And so it's very irresponsible to like hook a population on using all this plastic without a system of managing it, at least, or education. It's actually even just in the language, basura or basura is garbage. And but like leaves can be basura. So like you clean up your yard, or you clean up after a storm and some broken sticks and stuff fell down and you clean up, or like you have your food scraps in your kitchen, like the corn husks and rice husks and potato peel or whatever it is that you have, like sort of like your compost. That is the same word, basura, as like the new plastic garbage. And so the mentality is kind of heap it all together and throw it by the river, because that's what you've always done with garbage, with basura. And so we educate and we talk a little bit about new garbage and trying to help folks understand that there's a difference. Like the plastic will be in the ground for a million years and the leaves turn into beautiful soil and healthy dirt in a matter of a few weeks. And so there's a massive difference, and folks get it. But as far as this massive system, like the people that are producing the plastic and selling the plastic and bringing it all in, it's been a huge level of irresponsibility as far as educating and teaching people how to be responsible. So yeah, it's a bit about what's happening here locally.
Yeah, I love when you mentioned about like landlocked communities, because that's the issue that I face in my community, is that we're in a desert, so you don't see the effects of the ocean, and we're, you know, totally rural, so we don't have access to a lot of education, and people really don't understand that it really is all connected, and that what happens here is going to affect what happens here.
Part of this place, not a visitor to this place. And so yeah, so like we need that chain, and no matter where you are, it all affects everything else. And so you can have a plastic bag in upland Arizona that can end up killing a sea turtle, like because the rain will take it to the river will take it to the ocean, and then the turtle can find it in the ocean. And the plastic bag, it's got about 1,000 years before it starts to turn into little pieces, and then longer than that until it turns into toxins entering the soil, and then lots of years of staying as like weird hormones and toxins in the soil. And so definitely your actions wherever you are with your plastic affect the entire world, because everything's super connected.
Yeah, so on the topic of sea turtles, can you tell me a little bit about your work with sea turtles and some of your projects that you guys are working on?
Yeah, so I have about 10 years now of field experience with helping protect sea turtles. There's 7 species on the planet, and there's a lot of dangers that we've introduced to them. They're a very sensitive species. So there's 7 of them, and they're all considered endangered, basically. There's one that's threatened, but the Pacific population has now been listed as endangered. So that's the olive ridley, the most common. So even the most common is basically an endangered species, and then the 6 other are endangered, and a lot of them are entering critically endangered, and a couple are entering functional extinction, which is now, it's easy to be like, well, sea turtles are cool. Like pretty much anybody who sees them swimming is like in awe of them, and they're so beautiful. And so it's easy to find like some motivation of like, oh, let's protect this beautiful animal. But we have to go so much beyond like how much we like an animal or how much we value an animal. It's like, we don't even really know all the things that they do in the ecosystem, like all the roles they play. We know a few obvious things, like they regulate jellyfish populations, which is helpful in bait fish regulation, and then like the chain goes on. And so like we lose jellyfish regulators, there'll be a jellyfish population skyrocket, and then a loss of population of bait fish, and then a loss of food for larger fish. And so like that's how the chain can work. And so the sea turtles have a great importance. The things that we've introduced that threaten them are like our encroachment factors, right? There's rising sea levels because of the climate shift. So they're losing where they nest. They're losing habitat on the beaches. Like their nests are having to go higher and higher, and the waves are coming higher, and nests are being lost to that. There's fishing practices, the netting and the long lining. The turtles get caught. They're considered trash catch or accidental catch, and whether they're dead or not, they get pulled in the nets and thrown back overboard. And so the sea turtles are really susceptible to the dangers of like industrial fishing. And then there's the plastic. They eat jellyfish predominantly as adults, and they can't tell the difference between a plastic bag and a jellyfish, and so they'll consume plastic on the regular. There's been a lot of studies, and it's really rare to find a sea turtle that has not consumed plastic. There was a study of there were babies that were found deceased. So I think like 3 years or less old. And so they were just found, if they were found out in the ocean, that allowed them to be studied. And so biologists pulled them in and cut them open and then studied stomach contents, and 100% of found green sea turtles had plastic in their stomach. And so it's like you've got basically 100% of the babies are eating plastic. And so this, all 7 species are super endangered for a lot of encroachment factors that we've been doing, but there's a bigger one, and it's the illegal food trade. So in areas like where we are, there's a demand for people to collect the eggs off the beach, leave the beach, and go sell them. And in bars and restaurants, they get sold. The eggs are like eaten raw. You have like a beer, a little hot sauce, and an egg. It's kind of a newer tradition. It also used to be kind of a way to flash wealth a little, but not so much anymore. But it's still hanging on as like a cultural trend. And so there's folks that are very highly motivated in a very struggling economy. There's unemployment is massive here in Nicaragua. So there's people that are extremely motivated to take the eggs off the beach and go sell them. And now with that happening, it's just devastating to the turtles. In the natural rate, there's 10,000 eggs that can get laid in the sand. Out of those 10,000, you'll see about 1,000 hatch as babies and make it to the ocean. Out of those 1,000, 1 will survive to an adult. So it's 10,000 eggs for an adult. So the impact of the egg food trade has just been devastating, and it put almost every species into extinction. Several decades ago, governments got involved, conservation or environmental defense organizations got involved and started turning that around and offering support for sea turtles, and they're protected if there's enforcement. A lot of times you have legal protection, like it's illegal to go and take the eggs off the beach, but there's nobody enforcing that, so it happens. And so our project comes in, and we create an option for the local folks who do the egg collecting. If they're doing the egg collecting based on an economic need, we create a way for them to make a little bit of a living bringing the eggs to us instead of leaving the beach. And so we can like fence in a little area on the beach, and the local folks that do the egg collecting, they come in. We have a night guard and a day guard. We have somebody always out there, and they can receive eggs. They're trained how to create a nest just the way that sea turtles will, and with proper handling of the eggs with some care, it doesn't harm the eggs at all, moving them. And so then we can move them into the space that we guard and keep safe for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then after 6 weeks or so, the babies hatch. And what happens when the local folks who do the egg collecting, they see a turtle, they're going to collect the eggs. And in the past, they need to make some money. They're going to go sell them in the illegal black market. But now they have a choice. And our choice pays a little better. It's peaceful. It's not illegal. So it's safe. And it's easier because we're right there on the beach, so that they have less effort to put into it. And we really, really make sure that they feel that like they're thanked for doing this. And so if somebody else is around, like a visitor, like tourism or anything like that, if anybody's viewing and seeing this person turn the eggs over to us, we'll kind of go out of our way and be like, hey, this is one of our local allies on the beach. They save a lot of nests every year. Like, you should tell them thank you. And they'll be like, thanks for saving sea turtles. And the illegal poaching, it's dangerous. It's illegal. You wear dark clothing and you sneak around in the dark and you risk your well-being. And there's a way that feels like sneaking something, doing something illegal. But we have a chance to spin that, where all of a sudden now there's like a tourist thanking them for saving lives. And they're standing up straighter, and they're friendly. They're saying hello when they walk out at night. And so we've done that on 2 beaches here in southern Nicaragua. And it's like I mentioned intersectionality before. The sea turtles really, really, really need help and critical support, which is why I wanted to focus with Vital Actions on supporting the sea turtles. But intersectionality can never be ignored. Social justice can never be ignored. And so we had no right to come onto this beach and say, like, these sea turtle eggs are more important than whatever you want the money for. For example, these sea turtle eggs are more important than your hungry children. Like, that's not going to work. We're pitting people against each other. We're creating a conflict. We're going to have to compete against each other, and that's going to be very resource extensive, very expensive, and potentially dangerous. And so what we do is, instead of using our funding to have more guards and to have an aggressive patrol, on the beach. We use the funding for this reward system. And so they can walk up to us with a nest that they found, hand it over, they get paid a certain fee per every dozen egg, and then the eggs get protected and hatch. And that actually costs us less money in the long run for a greater success rate and for peace on the beach, no conflict, and for basically the money's feeding children. So it's just, so yeah, so that's basically how it works.
I love it. That makes me so happy because I feel like often people, when they think of, I'm just going to use conservation just for like a simple term, but like eco defense, they think of very like aggressive measures, and that we value more of like the animal or the environment than people. And what you're doing is proving otherwise, is that, hey, you can do both. You can, you know, help the environment out and build up your community. And I think that is super important. So thank you for that. On your website, it says that you guys have removed about 10,000 kilos of garbage from the beaches. So my question is, what do you guys do with all that waste that you find?
Well, that 10,000 data is that was last year, or that was actually that's data from 2018. So that was just in a year. It was like 6,000 sacks of garbage hauled away off of beaches. And so in that year, our system was a lot of focus on riverbed, estuary, and beach cleanups. And we would do like these really, really thorough cleanups where we come in and we sort recyclables when that's possible. So recycling is kind of a myth that is, in terms of like that it's a solution, and not even kind of a myth. It's really not. It's really inefficient, and very, 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 very little plastic actually gets recycled. And so we must not, like, we have to be really careful about seeing that as like, well, everything's okay, we recycle. But we do try to put that effort in. So we sort and send off recyclables to plants, like facilities that recycle. And so glass and plastic and a few other things can get pulled out of the loop like a little bit. But and then we're going to be picking up like big chunks of stuff like toilet seats and half a bucket and an old steering wheel. And then we just like haul that stuff. And then we go in and we rake at the high tide line, or like at the estuary tide line. And we actually will rake piles and then sort out driftwood and anything else, and then sit and pick microplastics. And so we'll have like a crew of volunteers that will spend like an hour on like a little pile, like one piece of microplastic at a time. Because when you see beach cleanups, it's like a lot of times it's because we want the beach to be prettier. Like, so like a hotel will definitely sponsor beach cleanups in front of their hotel because they're like, we want it to be pretty. And so like, that's for us. But if you're really doing beach cleanup and plastic management work for the sake of the habitat, you're going to focus on those almost impossible tiny, tiny pieces, because that's the shit that's the most dangerous and the oldest and releasing the most toxins. It's difficult to get, but difficult isn't impossible. And, you know, we just have to slow down and focus on, I remind our crews, like every single little piece is a victory. It's like a bird won't eat that one, hopefully. And then as far as where it goes, that's a really, really, really good question. Like it's so important. And I'm not going to pretend or hide. That year when we did all that hauling away, aside from what could be, either recycled or upcycling is actually a better option, where like if it's still got some use, find a place for it to be used and get it into something that that's a little more permanent. But a lot of those sacks were, unfortunately, we had to take them to the landfill. But we use these sacks that are going to survive for a few years, like without degrading. And then they're super tied. Like I trained our crews, like they're like, you're obsessed with the knots. I'm like, there's a reason for it, I promise. And so it's like they're super, super securely like tied so that they're not going to spill and just get dumped into the river that's next to the landfill like right away. And so the hope is that, like, I know where they are now. So like we could go to the landfill and grab them and do something with them if there's a use. And so we're like looking for better sources. And so in that case, that was sort of like in that year, our action was basically kind of like emergency habitat support, like harm reduction, like getting those bits and all that those little pieces and all that dangerous shit, like off the high tide line where it's a really active biosystem and really sensitive ecosystem, and kind of moving it. So it wasn't even really a cleanup effort. It's more of just kind of a harm reduction relocation. And obviously we can do better, right, than that. So like we got really good at this large scale, super efficient, really thorough cleanup. But at that time, we definitely needed to improve on like what's happening with the plastic. And like, you know, it's not fair. It's like, why is that even our responsibility? Like, why do I have to spend time trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do with that? But we have to step up and do that kind of, and figure that out, because this mess is permanent. Like, and it's extremely dangerous just to everybody, including us. So anyhow, what we've done since then is, we're working with a few people that, and this is my hope for those sacks. Like I said, I still know where they are. I've seen them recently. They're in a big pile at the landfill. And if they get left there for 20 years, those bags are going to fall apart. Once it rains, the plastic's going to float off. And then here we have this, we haven't pulled it out of the cycle. We just have the loop continuing, but at least the beach was safer for a while, right? Like, better than nothing. So now what we've done is, with the beach cleanup stuff, it's these really dense plastic. It's like recycling's not an option, and it's too many different types of plastic mixed together, and it's too dirty usually for any processing plant to want to mess with it. But there's some folks here who make cement blocks now, like cement building blocks, and they grind the plastic and stir it into their mix. And so we can haul these sacks to give to them now, and they'll mix it in and make these blocks. And then when people build their houses, the plastic is still there, but like it's being put into a wall that's going to stay for like 20 or 30 years before it gets torn apart or whatever. You know, and that brick, when that wall collapses, those cement bricks are still going to be intact. And so, and then maybe there's a use by then, 30 years from now, maybe we'll start harvesting plastic out of all these places that we've put it, because it can be turned into fuel. Like, it can be turned into gasoline or diesel. Like, there's people that have done that, melting down the plastic and refining it back into fuel. And so I think in the future, there'll be folks doing that. And so that's our focus now, is looking for a place to park the plastic that's like way safer than the landfill. It's like more secure, that it's not going to float away. And the most recent idea, I'll use this chance to show you my, it's not a new idea of ours. Like, I did not invent the eco brick. That's what I'm holding in my hand here. So that's our new model. And so that's now where the garbage goes. And we actually did something different this year. We haven't done beach cleanups. We shifted to inspiring people to do these. And so we put all of our funding and all of our energy into, we launched the idea in 4 local towns. And we used the power of economic stimulation in a struggling economy. So we basically put value to the garbage. Like, we incentivize money. Yeah, we made it so like if you see garbage, you're passing money. And so like folks that really need some financial support are motivated to do the cleanups and collect the garbage and create these eco bricks. And so the idea was, we have a local paid representative in 4 towns, and it's going to go into as many towns as we can as funding comes in. And so as we get more donations, it's extremely efficient for the money. We don't need that much. And I'm actually going to pitch to the local government agencies to talk about putting this into the municipalities. Like, I'd like to see, it'd be amazing if they had like a truck that drove through the towns and with a couple of employees that bought these on site. And so the way our model works right now is we put a paid representative in that town. So it's a local person who needed a job. It doesn't pay a lot of money, because it's not a lot of work, but they get a little bit of a fee per week, and they become the representative for anyone else in that town can create these eco bricks. So they go into the river, collect a big sack full of garbage, find their bottles, spend the time filling the bottle, and then they can sell these to us. And so we give 2 cord, which is the local currency, or 5 cord for big ones, like about this size or bigger. We give 5 Cordoba, or we pay 2 Cordoba for like little single size ones. And that's about like 5 cord is like 15 cents US maybe. And so it's not a fortune, but it's enough to motivate folks to do it. And so what we've seen are these massive cleanups up the riverbed and all around town. And we launched the program about 2 months before the first seasonal rains hit. So the idea was we would get all this stuff cleaned up before it hit the ocean, before it hit the beaches. And so this year the beach cleanups are less necessary. And so anyway, we did the eco brick thing. It's been about 14,000 of these bottles have come in now.
Wow.
Yeah, 14,000 of a bottle that will hold a sack full of garbage. So our beach cleanups did like 6,000 sacks of garbage, right? And this has pulled in like 14,000 or so. It's growing every day. Like I'll make a run this afternoon and pick some more sacks up from one of our representatives. And the only purchases involved in the plan are we buy these used sacks to hold all the bottles. And then there's local pay for the representative who's managing the bottles. And then there's, of course, the money needed to buy the bottles. But what we're seeing is it's not a lot of pay, and we're not like trying to abuse people in need by cheap labor or whatever. It's just like a little bit of stimulation through the money to motivate folks to pick up the garbage. Because if you're in need and you see garbage, then you see a little bit of money, and so you can put in a little effort. And then we should be cleaning this stuff up. Everybody, we're not going to blame somebody over another for this mess. We're all involved in it. Like we've all done it. And so we should all be active. And so like they're kind of volunteering in part by doing the cleanup, and then they get rewarded a little bit with the money. But what we've seen is the people that end up doing it and collecting these are folks that really, really, really need the support financially. And so it's folks that are literally starving will go out and do this work and then get enough money to buy groceries for the week. And so there's an awesome benefit to it as well. So that's how we're running it this year for the plastic.
I thought that walking us through what an average day looks like for you, because what you're doing is so unconventional. Not everyone can go out in the middle of the jungle. So can you walk us through an average day in your life?
Yeah, well, like you said, not everybody could like do that, right? Not everybody could drop all their stuff and get a hammock and live on the beach and start saving animals and stuff. That's for sure. But a lot of us can, and those that can't, if you're okay and you're stable and you have enough privilege, send $10 a month to somebody who can do that. Like, find one of your friends that can do it and get all of the rest of your friends to pull in, collectively donate to get that person somewhere doing this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so an average day in Nicaragua for Vital Actions is we live in a really beautiful remote area with very healthy jungle with a lot of wildlife. And so at sunrise, the jungle starts to let you know. And so there's birds, and there's quite often howler monkeys like sounding off. And so like basically at sunrise, you get woken up by the jungle and you just get up and you do your thing. And I'll start the day with, we do animal care work as one of our campaigns. And so we take in injured wildlife as well as domestic animals. And so the day usually starts with a round of flipping kennels and cleaning, and animal care is a lot of poop. And so like, so a lot of cleaning, filling up food dishes. And right now it's fairly easy. We have 2 foster cats and a land turtle, a freshwater turtle that we're helping recover from an injury. And so that's it. So just a quick round, checking in on them and making sure everybody's fed and has water. And then I'll take the foster cats up and playtime in our kitchen, have some breakfast. And then it ranges, like we're establishing a nature reserve. And so I'll go out for an early morning visit and do some surveying on how the trees are growing and how things look, and check in with our project manager out there and make sure that the work crew is good and all the needs are met. And then the sea turtle project always needs a little bit. So I'll stop by the beach and check in, read the data, see what happened last night, see if any new nest came in or if any baby sea turtles came in. And then there's just, there's administrative work. So I have like maybe 3 different types of days. There's one day where it's like, I get up at sunrise, I take care of the animals, I go hike up for like a couple hours into the nature reserve and check on it, this endangered tree that we just planted, to see how it's growing and get a report on whether we're going to continue with that species or not or whatever, and get some important data. And then by noon, I'm on the beach because there's a nest hatching that needs some help or something like that. And then I'm like restocking rubber gloves and making sure that we've got our reward money that we need for the nest. And then I'm back to the house. Hopefully I remember to have some beans and rice for lunch, and then like a little more time with the animals, and then like some meetings with the community where we're establishing a humanitarian resource bank. And there's this little workers cooperative that's in charge of volunteering and putting money into that bank. And so we'll have like a collective meeting. Today I have a meeting with one of our lawyers. And so I have days where it's just like, there's so many different things that it's almost like I don't even remember it all by the time, but it's all so stimulating and I love it all. And then I'll have days where I'm like at this desk on the computer all day, and it's so boring. And then I'll have like about once a month, I have a day where I'm like, I'm not even getting out of bed, And then, so like, those are my different kinds of days. It's either like so full of adventure and all these different campaigns. And we have like 8 active campaigns just right here in Southern Nicaragua. But I tell you what, though, like the days are so beautiful and the stuff we're doing, the stuff we get to see because of how embedded we are into to the local ecosystems and everything is just like, all day long, it's just beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing. So
for people who are just beginning this journey into zero waste and learning about sustainability, what are some tips that you want to give to like maybe beginners?
Right. So zero waste, the idea of zero waste mindedness is how I like it to be said, or how I like to say it. Because like zero waste, it's like sort of this almost impossibly seeming goal, and we don't want to turn it into like, it's not like an achievement. You're not going to up your neighbors. We're not competing. It's something we have to do. Like, we must face this. It's a big mistake that we've made using this permanent toxic garbage. We're locked into thinking we kind of rely on it because it's easy, but like easy is a relative term and cheap is also a relative term, but it's so expensive and has such massive impact on the environment when you factor in everything outside of just how easy it is to carry or whatever. So in the very beginning of looking at this idea, like I heard somebody say they're going to get good around it or get better around it. No one's going to get perfect at it, and there is no perfect anyway, but like, so definitely don't take it on like it's this achievement that's going to level you up. Like, let's dismantle hierarchy. Let's put that shit behind us. Let's just do it because it's a really important and super necessary move, and we're capable. There's replacements, there's options, and make it a process, right? So what I recommend, like one of the very first things that you should do to understand like what you're using and what sort of shifts you can make. And this isn't my idea, brand new, but yeah, I've seen it and it just works really well, is keep your garbage for a while, like whatever time period, like a week or 10 days or whatever. And then find a nice big floor, open space, and like spread it out and look at what it is. Because we don't do that. And we're like, there's this magical garbage move, like dragon that eats it or something. That's how we grow up, where it's like, put it here and it's gone. It's never gone. It's always there. And every single piece that any of us has ever used is still here and still out there. And so like spread it out and really look at it. And again, it's not like, oh, you're terrible for having that, or like, oh, I shouldn't have that. That's not our point. The point is knowing what you're using and knowing what's in there, and then discovering what you can change. And so you spread it out and you look at it. And like for me, it's the constant is oatmeal. And so I can either never eat oatmeal, which a lot of times I don't buy it. Like I just like, okay, this week, no oatmeal. I've put the work in to find places to buy it where I can buy it by the pound and bring my own little sack or one of the old bags from the old ones that I purchased and get it filled up. And so I usually have access to that, but I don't always. And so then I have this choice of like, either I don't get it or I get it and I'm really careful with what I do with, because that's the least we should be doing, is be super careful with what we're doing with the waste, with the refuse. And so this is actually one of the best things that I've seen, the best ideas, and anyone can do it at their house, is like collect your plastic, stuff it into one of these. Worst case scenario, this goes to the landfill. This might float into the ocean. It's going to have a long time until it breaks open and spread all of these other little tiny pieces that are more dangerous inside of it. Now, that's not what we should be doing, but that's like your worst case scenario. So anyway, once you've looked at what you've got in there, then you start working on like, what can I change, right? So then in the case of the oatmeal, it's like, find where I can buy it in bulk. Or maybe there's this particular cookie or something that I always get that, you know what, they're really not that good for me. And there's not an option to get it without plastic, but I think I can be okay without it. So like, get it less. Or like, can you live, you don't have to like I can't live my life without these cookies ever. Okay, get them sometimes, but get them hardly ever, and be super careful with what you do with the garbage in the beginning, and then work towards getting better around it, or getting better at your plastic management. And so find your tips that work, and like get your stuff. So the reason we have all this plastic crap is because we're like addicted to kind of like overstimulation. We're missing our natural connection to our natural elements, to our world. And so we feel something missing behind us as we're living in these, or we're missing something inside of us as we're living in these cities and everything. We don't get like trees around us, and we don't breathe clean air. And so like we feel that there's something missing, and we try to fill that with all these purchases. And that's where a lot of this garbage comes from. And so like you can still do that, but just get different stuff. And so I have the bamboo straw, the refillable, super pretty and elegant water bottle. You know, it doesn't have to be crappy stuff. You're not like you're not declining, or you're not like, you're not going to suffer for lack of like nice things. And so that's in the beginning, after you check out your garbage and start analyzing changes you can make. Like get yourself a really pretty little kit of stuff, bamboo fork, bamboo spoon, bamboo straw, like a dozen cloth bags if you can. Of course, not everybody has this privilege. If you don't have your privilege to buy a kit of like this nice stuff, like keep your water bottle around until it's literally falling apart, and keep filling it up. And that plastic bag that you took from the store, like bring it back to the store 10 times and fill it up with your stuff. Don't get a new one every time. And so there's little like stuff that everybody can do. And so, yeah, the basic recommendation is really look at what you're using and what your garbage is. And then piece by piece, just get into the process of gradually replacing it.
Are there any projects or promotions that you would like to kind of promote right now?
Well, I mean, all of our stuff, obviously, like I've launched all of our campaigns, and so I feel that they're like valid and important. Please check out vitalactions.org. There's donate buttons on there. I've designed this organization to run with an economic efficiency to generate like maximum action with minimal funding. And so you're going to see there's some language coming out now about the monolith nonprofits, or there's even a new terminology like the nonprofit industrial complex. And what you have is nonprofit organizations modeling themselves after giant corporation model, and using the same definitions of success, meaning like 20 board members that take 6-figure salaries. And so a bunch of people are rich because this thing operates in this big, beautiful building with their office in it, and everybody's got a nice car. And that's a very accepted measure of like success. But we're not doing it that way. My success is like, my definition of success is something that can continue. And that monolith industrial complex stuff is done. It needs to stop. It's collapsing. It's destroying everything. And so I've built Vital Actions to run on very little or no money. And so the donate buttons are really powerful. Whatever it is you see us doing, if you want to support it, there's ways to guide money towards different campaigns. Like there's options to select. We are planting trees. We're working on ways to manage the plastic disaster. That campaign is called Plastic Disaster Response. And we're protecting the endangered animals. We're establishing a nature reserve. We're doing a soup kitchen soon, an all vegan, intersectionally minded soup kitchen in the community where we're doing our nature reserve. We're doing food share programs, all of this. We're doing the animal care. It all functions with people supporting us. And so if you value this kind of work happening on the planet and you trust our organization, please find vitalactions.org and click one of those donate buttons, and together we'll get this work done.
Already discussed your website, but are there any other platforms that people can connect with you? Where can people follow you and keep up with you?
Cool. We have a small handful of, so there's the Instagram. So if you want to see semi-daily, like the most recent, look at Instagram. Because we don't have a web team, and I don't have a social media team. We're not using money for that. I do it. And so I do it when I have time, right? So like the Instagram is fresh, and it's Vital Actions on Instagram, no space or anything, just Vital Actions on Facebook. The Facebook is like about a month behind on the usual. I don't feel very good about Facebook these days. I don't use it very much. But we do
I'm the
have
opposite. I have more content on Facebook and Instagrams whenever I have time.
Patreon. So, excuse me, there's Patreon. Patreon.com/Vital Actions. That's actually the platform that I'm kind of the most excited about, because it's a giant network of small donations, because we want to prove sustainability here with the model, and we want to be able to see that we can get the plastic cleaned up, we can save the endangered species, we can get the trees planted without really changing your life. Like, I don't want you to suffer to get this stuff to happen. Like, I want you to have your life going, ethically minded, intersectionally focused, but like, send a few bucks our way. And if we get a network big enough of that. So Patreon is a way to do like $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. And I'm working on making it activated. Like there's going to be interviews or like question and answer sessions. Right now, we